It's 6:47 in the morning. Your alarm doesn't go off. You wake up an hour late, and the first thing you notice isn't the silence. It's the dark. Your phone won't turn on. Your lights won't turn on. The fridge in the kitchen has gone quiet. A sound you didn't even know you were listening to until it stopped. You walk outside expecting someone to explain it. Instead, you see your neighbor standing in his driveway, staring at his car. It won't start either. Somewhere down the street, a woman is banging on a gas station door that won't open because even the gas pump needs electricity to work. No warning, no countdown, no apocalypse movie moment. Just gone. And here's the question nobody wants to sit with. How many days would it take before this stopped being an inconvenience and started being the most dangerous event in modern history? A camping trip. No phone, no Netflix. Candles instead of light bulbs. Kind of peaceful, actually. That's the fantasy. Here's the problem. That fantasy assumes electricity only powers the things you can see. Your lights, your TV, your charger. It doesn't. Electricity is not a convenience layered on top of civilization. It is civilization's nervous system. And like a nervous system, when it goes dark, you don't just lose light. You lose control over your own body without even realizing it's happening. Because here's what almost nobody thinks about first. Water. Somewhere within a day, sometimes hours, the water pressure in your home starts dropping. Not because the pipes broke, because the pumps that push that water uphill across cities through treatment plants into your tap, those pumps run on electricity. No power, no pressure, no water. And suddenly the peaceful camping trip doesn't sound so peaceful anymore. Now here's where it gets worse. Food. You open your fridge out of habit even though you know it's off. Cold air spills out, but not for long. A full fridge stays safe for about 4 hours. A full freezer, sealed and untouched, might hold for 48. After that, every piece of meat, dairy, and leftover in your kitchen becomes a quiet, invisible threat. Multiply that by every household in your city, every restaurant, every grocery store with walk-in freezers the size of a room, all rotting at the exact same moment. Within 3 days, most cities on Earth are sitting on top of an amount of spoiling food that would normally take weeks to accumulate, happening all at once. And it's not just decay. It's smell. It's rats. It's disease vectors nobody planned for because nobody plans for every freezer in a city failing on the same afternoon. But food and water, as brutal as they are, aren't even the scariest part. The scariest part is something most people have never even considered. The hospital problem. Hospitals have backup generators. Everyone knows that. What almost nobody knows is how little time those generators actually buy. Most hospital backup systems are built to run for 72 to 96 hours, assuming the fuel supply chain is intact, assuming trucks can deliver diesel, assuming roads are clear. But if the power is gone everywhere, not just at the hospital, but at the fuel refineries, the pumping stations, the trucking company dispatch centers, that fuel doesn't get delivered. The generators don't run out of fuel because they're broken. They run out because the entire supply chain that feeds them was also electric. So somewhere around day 4 or 5, in hospitals across the world, the machines keeping people alive on ventilators, dialysis, and life support begin shutting down. Not from an explosion, not from a disaster you can point a camera at, but from something as invisible and mundane as an empty fuel tank. This is the part of the thought experiment where people usually go quiet, because we don't think of electricity as a life support system. We think of it as a light switch. Here's something even stranger. Within hours, not days, hours, your money becomes a story you can no longer prove. Card readers don't work. ATMs don't work. Online banking doesn't work. Even the servers that store the record of how much money you have. Gone dark. Cash still exists technically, but cash was never designed to be the backbone of a modern economy. It was designed to be pocket change for a system that assumed electricity would always be there to verify the rest. So people start doing something humans haven't done at scale in over a century. They start bartering. A neighbor with bottled water becomes more powerful than a man with $10,000 in a bank account he can't access. Wealth, in the blink of a blackout, stops being about numbers and starts being about what you physically have in your hands. And this is where the story stops being about inconvenience and starts being about a completely different set of rules for human survival. The silent cities now zoom out. Not one house, not one hospital, an entire city. Cities were never designed to function without power for more than a few days. Traffic lights go dark, which sounds minor until you realize intersections without signals don't become first come, first served. They become chaos. Within the first 24 hours, accidents spike, not because people are reckless, but because an entire silent language, red, yellow, green, has vanished overnight. Elevators stop. In cities built vertically, this traps the elderly, the disabled, anyone above the 5th or 6th floor. In buildings that suddenly have no way down except stairs, most of them can't manage. Communication breaks next. Cell towers have battery backups too, usually just a few hours worth. Once those drain, phones become expensive paperweights. No calls, no texts, no way to know if your family across town is okay. This is the part almost nobody predicts. The loneliness, not the darkness, the disconnection. For the first time in most people's lives, they cannot simply find out what's happening beyond what they can see with their own eyes. And humans, it turns out, handle uncertainty far worse than they handle hardship. Here's the twist most people miss. This isn't hypothetical. It's happened before, just never everywhere at once. In 2003, a single software glitch triggered a blackout across the northeastern United States and parts of Canada. 50 million people lost power. It lasted in some areas less than 48 hours. And even in that short window, something revealing happened. Crime dropped in some neighborhoods because people gathered outside, talked to strangers, helped each other navigate the dark. But in other neighborhoods, looting spiked almost immediately because the absence of visible authority. No working cameras, no streetlights, no alarms created a vacuum. Same event, two completely different human responses, which raises an uncomfortable question. If a 2-day blackout in one region could split human behavior that dramatically, what happens after 2 weeks everywhere with no end date in sight? This is where most people assume society collapses entirely, but that's not what history or human psychology actually shows us, because somewhere around day 7 to day 10, something shifts. The initial panic starts to burn out, not because the crisis is over, it's gotten worse, but because panic is expensive. Biologically, the human body cannot sustain high alert stress indefinitely. Eventually, exhaustion forces a strange kind of calm, and in that calm, something ancient reactivates. Adaptation. Communities that have access to the oldest form of infrastructure, the kind that doesn't need a power grid, start to stabilize first. Wells instead of pumped water, wood stoves instead of electric ones, root cellars instead of refrigerators. The neighborhoods that survive best aren't necessarily the wealthiest. They're the ones that never fully deleted the analog version of survival from their collective memory, which means the real deciding factor in this scenario isn't technology at all. It's forgotten knowledge. Think about how many people today can start a fire without a lighter, preserve food without a fridge, navigate without GPS, purify water without a filter cartridge shipped from a warehouse. For most of human history, these weren't survival skills. They were just Tuesday. Electricity didn't just power our tools. It quietly erased an entire category of human competence because we no longer needed it. And here's the part that reframes the entire thought experiment. The scenario isn't really testing whether humanity can survive without electricity. It's testing whether we remember how we survived before we had it. Some communities do. Off-grid homesteaders, certain rural and indigenous communities who never fully integrated into the always-on grid lifestyle. Preppers, who spent years being mocked for wasting time on skills that suddenly become the only currency that matters. Overnight, the person who seemed paranoid for stockpiling water and learning to grow food becomes the most valuable person on the block. Here's the part of this thought experiment that goes beyond survival trivia and says something about us. Every convenience electricity gave us also quietly made us more fragile, not because convenience is bad, but because every time we outsourced a skill to a machine, we didn't just gain time, we lost redundancy. We lost the backup plan. For 300,000 years, humans survived through distributed knowledge. Every person, every family, every village held a working copy of the skills needed to stay alive: fire, food preservation, water purification, shelter building, navigation. Electricity didn't just centralize power, it centralized dependence. We built a civilization so efficient, so interconnected, that it only takes one missing layer, the layer most invisible to us, to expose how much of our modern competence was borrowed, not owned. This is the uncomfortable truth. hiding inside a scenario that starts with something as simple as a dead phone battery. So if the power stayed off, not for a week, but for months, what would actually happen? Not a Hollywood collapse, something slower and in some ways stranger. Populations would decentralize. Cities built for density and dependent on constant supply chains would become harder to sustain than smaller communities near water sources and farmland. A slow migration outward, not from panic, but from necessity, would begin. Agriculture would revert, at least partially, to pre-industrial methods. Modern farming relies heavily on electrically powered irrigation, refrigeration, and processing. Without it, food production would drop, but it wouldn't vanish. It would shrink toward smaller-scale, localized farming, the kind that dominated human history until roughly a century ago. Trade would return to something almost medieval in structure, regional, physical, negotiated face-to-face, rather than instant and global. And knowledge, real, hands-on knowledge, would become the most valuable inheritance a person could pass down. Not a bank account, not a job title, the ability to do things. So here's what this thought experiment is really asking. Not, could humanity survive without electricity? Humanity survived without it for the overwhelming majority of its existence. Of course it's possible. The real question is this: have we, individually, kept even a fraction of the competence our ancestors carried as a baseline? Or have we quietly, comfortably let it go? Because the honest answer for most people reading this is unsettling. We've built a version of ourselves that is extraordinarily capable with electricity and startlingly dependent without it. And that's not a flaw unique to modern humans. It's the oldest pattern in our species. We adapt to whatever environment we're given, and then we forget the version of ourselves that existed before that environment arrived. Somewhere, right now, in a city you've never visited, a hospital generator is being tested, a prepper is rotating stored water, a farmer is fixing an old hand pump nobody's used in years, just in case. They're not paranoid. They're remembering something the rest of us outsourced a long time ago. Because the truth is, electricity didn't make humans smarter or stronger or more capable. It made us forget how capable we already were. And maybe that's the real answer to the question you clicked on. The lights don't define whether we survive. They just decide how much of ourselves we have to remember before we do.